تیرے روزے تے مدینے وچ رہن والیا جالی اکھاں نال لاواں میں مدینے وچ رہن والیا تیرے روزے تے مدینے وچ رہن والیا جالی اکھاں نال لاواں میں مدینے وچ رہن والیا میرے آقا تسی لجپالے صدا دے گل مندیاں نو لاندے گل مندیاں نو لاندے صدقہ حسنین پاواں میں مدینے وچ رہن والیا صدقہ حسنین پاواں میں مدینے وچ رہن والیا تیرے روزے تے مدینے وچ رہن والیا جالی اکھاں نال لاواں میں مدینے وچ رہن والیا
قلبي للمدينة لرسول الله فاقتفى القلب حنينا طالبا لقياه يا طيبة الأنوار لي شوق تبعت هداه يا طيبة الأنوار لي شوق تبعت هداه شوق تبعت هداه ارتقينا للمعالي والخطى ازدادت حنينا إذ تراءت كالخيال روضة الهادي نبينا ارتقينا للمعالي والخطى ازدادت حنينا إذ تراءت كالخيال روضة الهادي نبينا إننا يا رب جئنا بقلوب مستكينة نهجنا النبراس يهدي دربنا نحو المدينة مدينة مدينة.
قلبي للمدينة لرسول الله، فاقتفى القلب حنينا طالبا لقياه.
يا طيبة الأنوار لي شوق تبعت هداه.
يا طيبة الأنوار لي شوق تبعت هداه، شوق تبعت هداه.
يا رسولا جاء يبغي رحمة للعالمين، في يديه نور فجر يغمر المعتم فينا.
يا رسولا
جاء يبغي رحمة للعالمين، نور فجر يغمر المعتم فينا.
القرآن أمن يلبس القلب السكينة، هذه الأرواح تسعى
لحبيب في المدينة، مدينة مدينة.
قلبي للمدينة لرسول الله،
فاقتفى القلب حنينا
طالبا لقياه.
يا طيبة الأنوار لي شوق تبعت هداه.
يا طيبة الأنوار لي شوق تبعت هداه،
شوق تبعت هداه.
ما رأيت من ذي لمة في حلة حمراء، في حلة حمراء أحسن من رسول الله، كاملا في ذاته مكملا في أوصافه، ما خلق الله قبله ولا بعده مثله في الأنام، كاملا في ذاته مكملا في أوصافه، ما خلق الله قبله ولا بعده مثله في الأنام، أبيض اللون مشربا بالحمرة وجناته مروية.
Following is a repeat show that was previously broadcast on Unity FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Parenting Hour. You're tuned in to Unity FM 93.5 here in the West Midlands and 105.1 you're tuned in on if you're listening to us in Luton, Milton Keynes, Peterborough on Inspire FM. Thank you for being with us this evening. You may be tuned in from some other part of the UK or even abroad, because we know the Unity FM app really works well abroad as well, mashallah, and people tune in to us from all different places in the world. This evening is a very broad topic in a way, because it's not just locally to Birmingham. Sometimes we have some very local topics that we talk about, even though our guests are local, mashallah, and we'll get them to introduce themselves in a minute. And they're very well known in Birmingham and do a lot of work in the Bahu Centre in particular. We want to talk about pregnancy, pregnant women, the help we can give them, the support we can give them in relation to our mosques, in relation to our communities, in relation to being together and coming together in unity. As some emails have gone out today, I don't know if you've seen it, it's called Coming Together and Strengthening Up. Indeed, that we're all coming together and helping our younger generations and our babies and young children to be better next generation. So there's a lot of work going on nationally around this. The Royal Highness has done some work that's come out on social media, linking very much in with what we're speaking about today, indeed. So it's very much in the news, in the headlines, and this is our opportunity this evening to bring things together of how we all can help our next generation, how we can get that generation, inshallah, to be a better generation, looking at brain development, looking at the psychology that underpins this. We've often talked about attachment theory and how we can build our babies' brains to be better, inshallah, in this period, because this underpins the rest of the decisions they make in their lives. And of course, they make those decisions with their families, with their communities, with their loved ones, with their mosques. So that leads me into introducing our guests this evening. Sheikh, if you'd like to introduce yourself, Dr. Hafiz, it'd be lovely to talk to you and our listeners to know you a little bit. Assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute honor to be on this esteemed program. My name's Dr. Hafiz Ather Hussain. I live in Leicester. I work as an Imam, researcher and writer. And at Birmingham, I often do pay visits to lead the Jummah prayers, the Friday prayers at Sultan Bahu Trust. A lot of my work is related to schools, is related to community-based initiatives, like this one in particular. And we're happy to participate in such programs which remind us the pivotal role Islam plays in our lives in general, and then in particular what role the mosque plays in our lives. So I think and I hope and I pray that this program will open people's eyes and remind ourselves of how important the mosque is in our lives, especially for such an important topic area like women's health and pregnancy.
MashaAllah, it is really a big topic, and we will come back and discuss in more detail. But before we start discussing it, I want to introduce our other guest, MashaAllah. She's waiting here patiently indeed. Her name is Shabana Parveen. Welcome to the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you for having me on the show. It's truly an honor to be here with yourself and Dr. Hafiz Ather. I have my little man here in my page name. So I'm a mother of 3 children, and I'm training to be a doula at the minute, and we had our last online session today. And I've been very, very lucky to join Approachable Parenting's doula services, and we've just begun our journey, and inshallah, for myself and all of the other ladies, it will be a journey of so many beautiful stories.
MashaAllah. We will come back and talk about that in more detail as well, and how doulas, as they're known now, but traditionally wise in many communities, people used to do this traditionally wise. Now there's formal training around this and how we can help and support in helping our communities. Let me first start talking about Islam, though. what does Islam say about pregnancy, and how is the best way to support our pregnant women? And we're going to go to our sheikh for this, inshallah.
I think there's a beautiful, amazing, intrinsic link between women's health and in particular pregnancy and the very essence of our religion. I don't need to spend time to remind our listeners that our faith is based on the most central concept of rahmah, which translates as mercy. The most oft recited name of our Lord is that he is the Rahman and Rahim. He is the most merciful and most compassionate, and this comes from the word rahmah. Our Prophet, peace be upon him, is rahmatan lil alameen. He's not just a mercy for the Muslims and non-Muslims, he's a mercy for all of the worlds, for all of the universes. So rahmah is the most important, one of the most important concepts in our religion. I find it so beautiful that it's no coincidence that the Arabic word for a woman's womb, where a baby grows, is actually the same family of words where we get rahmah from. And the Arabic for womb is reham. So you can see that reham and rahmah and rahman and rahim and rahmah, they all stem from the same family of words in Arabic. And what this really shows is that Islam really acknowledges pregnancy and the position of women in our religion. It reminds us that the woman's womb is the most merciful place on earth, really. So right from the fundamentals, Islam is saying that pregnancy is about rahmah. It's about the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how a child in such a small, confined place can be given every single possible need and have to put no effort in whatsoever. When it comes to supporting pregnant women, again, when you look at the Holy Quran, which was revealed as a book of guidance, it's hudal lil muttaqin. It's a source of guidance for the pious. It's a book of rulings. It's a book of telling us how to live our lives. It's a book reminding us of the stories and examples of previous prophets and messengers. Yet at the same time, and this is something which again shows the magnificence of our religion, there are so many places in the Holy Quran which are full of scientific facts, things that at that time when they were revealed could not have been known by any human. And now, thanks to technology and science, we know them now. And of all of the scientific facts that we find in the Holy Quran, I personally think the most detailed, the most outstanding, the most mind-blowing is how Islam could describe the different stages of pregnancy, the different development of the fetus, what develops in the child, at what stage, and so forth. There's a good reason why Allah has mentioned this. He's just asking us to reflect on it. He's asking us to remind our community of the importance of it, to share it in our Friday sermons, to share it in our talks and in our papers. So from the onset, Islam has given us the groundwork to talk about this issue. It's given us sufficient guidance for us to start talking about it in our community, to break the taboo and stigma, to talk about how this is really a sign of Allah's rahmah, and what we can do to support women who are pregnant or about to give birth.
Brilliant, mashallah. You've given us a lovely foundation to start on and starting our program. And mashallah, as you say, there's a lot mentioned in the Quran about this. Do you think, Shabana, that our communities understand what's mentioned in the Quran? I know you mentioned that you recently trained up as a doula. Do you think our communities understand all of that and the importance of this, of pregnancy, of what goes on, the changes of the responsibilities parents have, mums and dads, but I know we're talking specifically about mums here with the work you do.
I think our communities, I think from what Hafiz said, that a lot of the science is in there in the Quran about the miracle of pregnancy and lots of different foods. And certain things, yes, I believe the community are aware of, because like something like dates is consumed a lot during pregnancy and post-labor. But I think we have a long way to go to fully understand the beauty of Allah's miracle of pregnancy and childbirth and everything that is said in the Quran, and from the birth of Hazrat Isa. So we still have so much more to learn, because I've learned so much in my own journey, and I'm learning so much more with this Doula training as well. So we, as communities, do know some, but there's still a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. There's a long way to go, and you mentioned some things there about dates, and which brings me into foods, I suppose, and practices that our parents should know about, things that are mentioned in the Quran. So, Sheikh, what do you think about the best practice in Sunnah? Some examples of, Quran and Sunnah that people can actually take and implement in the home.
I'll give an example. There's many verses in the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the creation of humans. And I'll read 3 of those verses. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَهُوَ الَّذِي أَنْشَأَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ. And Allah is the one who created for you hearing, He created for you sight, and He created for you hearts. So that's one verse. And Allah says, I created hearing, sight, hearts. Another verse. وَجَعَلْنَا لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ. And we have created for you hearing, we have created for you sight, we have created for you hearts. Another one. قُلْ أَرَأَيْتُمْ إِنْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ سَمْعَكُمْ وَأَبْصَارَكُمْ وَخَتَمَ عَلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ. Do you not see that if Allah took away your sight, He took away, your hearing, your sight, and put a cover on your hearts? In all of these verses, Allah always mentions the hearing first. And when He said He's created man in the womb of a mother, then Allah always says that He created your hearing first. So Allah is mentioned the hearing, sight, and the heart, but deliberately, and it's consistent. Allah mentions the ear first. This is something which is very recent in a paper published by the Islamic Medical Association. Dr. Keith Moore, he wrote that the development of the fetus, when it comes to its development, the fetus's ears begin to develop as early as the 22nd day of pregnancy. So by the 22nd day of pregnancy, a child can technically have hearing ability. And then the sight, the heart, and the other organs and parts of the body, they develop much later. We've always said, and we've always used as an example to encourage our Muslim sisters who are pregnant, is to take great care in what they listen to during their pregnancy. Because what they are listening to during the 9 months of pregnancy is also heard by the child. So if, for example, the pregnant woman is often listening to the Holy Quran, when the child comes into this world and hears the Quran, subhanallah, the child will be able to understand, well, I've heard that sound before. It will recognize it, and it will fall in love with the recitation of the Holy Quran. Likewise, if a woman spends 9 months listening to rap music, listening to rock and roll, then when rock and roll or rap music is played later in their lives, it's natural. They will recognize it and they will understand that this is something which I heard before. So there's just a simple example of what support we offer to our Muslim sisters. And we offer examples of simple things, just to make sure that they understand the significance of what they're about to do. They are not just in a medical, procedure by giving birth to a child. They're increasing the ummah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're making our Prophet proud. So we will offer whatever we can in order to show this, and we'll continue to do that.
MashaAllah, we could continue on talking here, but we're coming into a commercial break very shortly indeed. And our listeners, maybe you want to ring in, and maybe you would like to ring in indeed and engage with us in the conversation. The number again is 0121 772 8892. That's 0121 772 8892. Thank you. We're being counted down now. You may be able to hear the countdown indeed going into the commercial break. But we're going off into a commercial break. Assalamu alaikum.
Following is a repeat show that was previously broadcast on Unity FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Parenting Hour. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5 here in the West Midlands and 105.1 if you're tuned into us on Inspire FM. This evening we're talking about the roles of women, men, parents in relation to pregnancy, in relation to parenting, in relation to the new generation, the new children being born and what we can impart on them and the knowledge and why we're doing this. And we've had lots of beautiful references from our wonderful Sheikh, Dr. Hafiz. Thank you so much for coming on and actually having a really good foundation of why we're talking about this and explaining to us about those foundations, what's already in the Quran that I'm sure our listeners know, but it's always important to have that reminder indeed. And we also have Shabana with us that's been talking a little bit about doula, but we probably need to talk a little bit more about this. So I was thinking there over the break about pregnancy, about birth, about supporting life. And I think first we will go to about the mosques, and we'll come back to the family in a little bit and the support of the dads and the males and mothers-in-laws, and that we'll talk about this in a little bit. But first, because we've been talking about the mosques, how can the mosques be encouraged to be more involved, to participate, to encourage women to be more there involved in what's going on, and to be men and women and as parents to be supported more? What do you think can happen?
There are a lot of things that we can do. I think one of the good examples that I can come up with right now is some of the programs that Approachable Parenting have, like the Chit Chat and Chives, where the mosques can hold them. They can be held at different masjids, and which just brings a lot of women in who otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to attend the mosque, because sometimes at events it's difficult for women with young children to attend due to the nature of the event. So I think that's really important for mothers, babies, toddlers, to maybe hold more programs for expectant families. I'm really sorry, I have a little one. Yeah. So hold more programs for expectant families and try and bring in the services which offer the extra support for young new families. And there are like a series of different things that we can cover in pregnancy and childbirth, in nurturing young families, and maybe mental health support for like trying to see when somebody needs help. I'll hand it back to you, Kathleen.
Okay, no problem. I can see you have your hands full there. I know our listeners can't see this, but this is a live show, and our guest is a mother, as many of our guests are multitasking, doing lots of different things. Shabana is a mother and she's multitasking at the moment. We're still waiting to hear from you listeners. If you'd like to engage with us this evening, please do ring 0121 772 8892. line too. But in the meantime, while she settles our children down, I'm going to go back to and ask a question to Dr. Hafiz about, the mosque. We talked about the mosque a lot before the break, and we talked about Quran and Hadith. MashaAllah, we are steeped. We're very lucky as Muslims. MashaAllah, it's a faith that has given all the answers there, and we have whatever we need. We have the answers, but sometimes our parents don't turn to our faith, and maybe I think the mosques need to be more supportive to our parents throughout the process of pregnancy and childbirth, and it's a crucial period. How can we help our parents to turn to the mosques more during this time?
It's a generational question as well. What I found from my own experience, that if you go back 10, 20 years ago, then the Imam and the mosque, they did play more of a central role when it came to childbirth. So, for example, it was always the Imam who would be called to deliver the azan and iqama in the ears of a newborn child. And then he could offer tender advice about the early stages of childbirth. We were there to offer suitable advice on what kind of names to choose for the child. We would offer advice on where to get circumcision done if it was a male child. I think the mosque was great in post-pregnancy counseling and help and advice. Even when in the past, we never really had programs that would help our parents go through the actual pregnancy. What I see today, however, is the internet's taken over everything. And we're not being used as often as we used to. So, for example, when it comes to suitable Muslim names, people will just go online now and pick the most fancy rather than asking the Imam whether it's most suitable. People will Google where to get circumcision done from. People will just Google about the early practices of tahniq and so forth. So I think part of it is the new generation, which are very dependent on the internet. We have offered this service in the past, but like our guest said as well, is we need to be more active in that. I think there should definitely be more courses for existing pregnant women can come and gain help from the imams and from female representatives in the mosque.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, that is something that we feel the mosque is really the hub there, and probably could be used more in bringing people together, and we're very lucky to have these hubs that often outside prayer times are actually not being used and could be used. This is an education. This is, something that was used at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that the mosques were used. The mosques were there as a really integral part of education, and it was really good to have those places indeed on time. Oh, we have a caller indeed. So if you'd like to put through the caller, please.
Yeah, the caller is.
Thank you. Our studio is working hard in the background. Assalamu alaikum, caller.
Yeah, wa alaikum salam.
Can't hear you very well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, wa alaikum salam.
Yes, great. I can barely hear you. Can you give us is it a question or a comment that you'd like to say or join in the conversation somehow?
Yes, it is, yeah. Based on your current topic at the moment with regards to the masjid and the community.
I can't really hear you.
Right, well, I'm not quite sure why you can't hear me. I can hear you loud and clearly.
I'm just wondering if the studio managers can put up the volume a little bit or maybe repeat the question.
Yeah, I can hear you very clearly, Sister Kathleen. I'm not quite sure
MashaAllah,
why.
that's good. I can just barely hear that you can hear us clearly. But I'm afraid we can't. Maybe the studio managers can repeat the question for us, please.
It wasn't a question, it was a participation, but You're more than
Yes.
welcome to pass me over if you want, unless you can hear me clearly now. I take it you can't hear me clearly.
I'm so sorry. Can any of our guests hear that, the callers? Maybe you can hear better than me.
Apologies, I couldn't
Okay.
hear you.
Yeah,
Can't
can
hear.
you...
Unfortunately, we can't hear you very, very well.
Right,
I'm just
okay.
sending a message to the studio manager so that they can actually refer
Right.
what or translate what you're trying to say to us, or
Yeah, sure.
yeah, inshallah. So if you stay on the line so that they can talk to you,
Right.
indeed, and maybe they can
Sure.
put it in the chat the message you're trying to get across. So while we're trying to correct that, yes, one of our studio managers coming in now. We can hear you.
Yeah, are you able to hear clearly now?
Oh, better. Oh, yes. Thank you. That's much better.
Right, okay, that's good. Okay, well, with regards to the mosque or the masjid and the community, there's obviously some kind of a clear disconnect. You know, things are not terribly, terribly bad, but they're increasingly getting worse. And they're getting worse with the young ones. I think more often than not, we're seeing a disconnect because there are many other things that parents can do to get involved with their kids in the masjids, and not necessarily completely directly related around the faith. You know, activities like, you know, bringing a plant in, teaching kids and parents how to grow seeds in pots, bringing your book in and having a reading session for an hour or half an hour on science fiction or science or any other subject like this. It's the engagement. However, the only thing we see that seems to be coming out of the masjid is directly related to the Quran or the Sunnah. That's not a problem at all. We're not saying it's a problem. What we're saying is that Islam is about that, but it's also about this world as well. And so by getting engagement on non-direct Quranic or Hadith-related issues, it can only, you know, encourage parents to want to bring their children in, because the children may then participate. You know, like bring your favorite toy in, you know, just come to the masjid. And by doing this, you're actually creating this engagement and letting the local community know that it's not just about opening the Quran, and it's not just about learning all the hadiths, which are very important, of course, but it's also about things that are of interest to us. We have to live the life. There are many things that we can do to occupy our times. Otherwise, you're going to be in a situation where the children are in their rooms, the parents are downstairs probably watching something on television or busy talking to their friends. You've got a disconnect in the house, and then there's definitely going to be a disconnect with the masjid for sure. And you've got this epidemic now where you've got, particularly in Birmingham, shops that have got flashing lights outside, you know, Stratford Road, Coventry Road, that are open 24/7, selling nitrous oxide gas to young children to lose their minds. You know, these shops that have lights flashing 24/7 a day, they are killing our children. It's as simple as that. And our parents, unfortunately, know nothing about what's going on because the children know how to hide it. And so this is the sort of effects we're seeing from a disconnect. And that's why we need the engagement. And that's really what I can say. It should be more than just, there is the time to read Quran, there's a time to Hadith, but we need more parental engagement in the masjid for them to come and do other things like bring your book, your favorite book. You know, parents themselves, you know, create a parents' reading circle, you know, on a non-fiction book or a fiction book. You know, just get them into the masjid so that way they can talk about issues that affect them. They can create, you know, sort of what used to be called a focus group. And this is how the community builds itself and counters these sorts of evil people that have their lights flashing 24/7, selling nitrous oxide gas, killing our children, or rather killing our children's brain cells, because that's what it's doing.
Very well said, mashallah, brother. Thank you for ringing in. I didn't catch your name at the beginning.
Well, I'm just a local person. I'm quite concerned about the fabric of this inner community. You know, we're a good community on the whole. We're a very good community. You know, we're a big contribution. Muslims are a big contribution to the UK. So contrary to what people, believe, we're a massive contribution, except what tends to happen is that we tend to get headlined for the slightest of events that happen. And this seems to, turn our children's heads the other way, perhaps in embarrassment, but not realizing that we're actually not that bad at all. We're pretty good. We're pretty decent people on the whole. But the thing is, what's happening is that there are undercurrents, and we have to be aware of this. Parents must be aware that their children, not necessarily for certain, but most likely either know someone or are themselves getting involved in things that will affect their brains. Your brain is the biggest richness you have. It's your biggest asset. We talk about the heart in Islam, the qalb. Well, the qalb is fine. Leave the qalb because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created that qalb. But the brain is something that's developed and is constantly developing. And once you start to mess around with the brain by these substances, this is substance abuse. It's very difficult to save that child. So honestly, focus on your brains as adults. Look after your brain. We talk about, or we hear about sisters wanting to exercise in the gym to lose a couple of pounds. We hear about brothers wanting to, get a six-pack or whatever it is. And nobody talks about the brain. What exactly are you doing to look after your brain? Because if your brain cells are going, you've got nothing. No matter how much weight you lose to make yourself look fit, no matter how much of a six-pack or an eight-pack you have, it means nothing if your brain does not function correctly. And there are households, trust me, there are households in Birmingham, in the city, in and around Stratford Road, Coventry Road, whose parents are going through hell because of these shops that are selling these nitrous oxide gases. And you will not believe what they're going through. And apparently it's legal. However, this is substance abuse. And until there's enough parents to get together and say, well, look, this situation needs to be addressed, because it may well be legal to sell nitrous oxide over a counter, but it's now being sold with the intent that they are to profit knowingly of young kids and young adults doing self-harm, because this is self-harm, actually. And, the issue needs to be raised.
It's a good point, actually, that you're raising, and Jazakallah khairan for ringing in. And,
you're welcome.
And I think we need to come back and we will answer that. I mean,
sure.
One of the points that you're making is that our mosques should be more like Islamic societies, and actually I know some areas that are doing this. I know in Ireland, actually, one of the mosques there have a restaurant that all the neighbours, non-Muslims, come in because it's a 4-star restaurant, and you see them walking in and walking out, walking into the bookshop, walking into the supermarket, because they have that space there. So people come into their restaurant, and it's a very open space, and families come there. So maybe if I go back to Sheikh to kind of extend this, how can we build on that here, this suggestion of having our mosques more open and more of a community space? Jazakallah khairan.
You're welcome.
The gentleman
You're welcome.
is absolutely right. He's raised some very, very valid points about what's happening in our society and what it's doing to our health. We're not going to divert away from the Quran and Sunnah, but our aim really is to show that the Quran and Sunnah still matters today in the 21st century. And any speech, any program, any presentation, or any paper I write, I'm doing that. And I'm showing that for modern problems, you need classical solutions in the Quran and Sunnah. So I'll give you an example. In the last few Jummah prayers, I've been talking, because it's the new year, I've been talking about effective time management. When it comes to certain news stories that are happening, then we'll bring that up in our Friday speeches. In the last calendar year, we've done speeches on responsibility, on Brexit, on obesity, on addiction, on gang crimes, on knife crimes. But unfortunately, and I do have to say this, and it's not a problem related to a particular city or a particular mosque, is that as an imam, when I stand for the sermon, the mosque is empty. There is no one there listening. Mosques are at different stages in what they can offer to their community. Now, there are some mosques, like you just mentioned as well, who are so far up in that development that they can offer great social services, even when it comes to helping the wider non-Muslim community, bringing them in and making them understand the kind and compassionate nature of Islam. But not every mosque is in that position, financially or otherwise. But what I do see from a lot of my colleagues, and because it's not on Twitter, because it's not on Facebook, people don't see it, is that there are many of my colleagues who are working tirelessly to deal with the specific problems that their community has. Every community has a different problem. You know, what might happen in Alam Rock might be completely different to what is needed in Walsall. I have an imam in a city in Birmingham whose mosque is right in an area where some of the acts that the gentleman described is happening, where drugs, where addictions and all of these problems are happening. And he's opened the mosque up more or less like a community center, a club. He started boxing lessons. He's had a PlayStation put into the mosque. He's kept people off the streets. Then I have other colleagues who have a different situation. They have more elderly in their mosque. So what do? They ensure that there are services available for the elderly. They are looked after. Their diet is looked after. They have a safe bank in the winter months when so many went through so many difficulties. We are doing what we can, but to give the impression that we're only talking about the Quran and Sunnah, I think is misleading, because the point we want to put across is that all of our modern predicaments and problems can be tackled through the Quran and Sunnah. Mm-hmm. The advice is there for us. We can tell pregnant women, for example, what type of foods to eat when they are going through childbirth. The Sunnah mentions dates because it, for example, softens the womb's walls, and it makes the contraction much easier. We can tell people about, what kind of practices to do, but we need an audience to listen to us. And when it comes to child attendance to the mosques, it's purely dependent on the parents. If the parents come to the mosque, then the children will as well. But if the parents say to the children, go to the mosque, that's very different to saying, come to the mosque, and then they actually go collectively. So we know the depths of the problems. We're not oblivious, and we haven't got our head buried in the sand. But we know that the problems differ in different areas of the country. But one thing we are doing is working tirelessly to ensure that the home is considered as a very important sanctity, and that we can help whatever advice we can give to ensure that this is tackled properly.
Brilliant. I know we want to answer that as well, and we have another caller on the line. I'm not too sure if we've got time to go to the other caller because we're coming near the end of the show. But after, can we just quickly answer this? And caller, if you just hold on for a little minute, we will take you as well. Shabana, I know you want to come in and respond to this also.
So, from the way I look at it, the way I think our mosque looks at it, and many of the masjids, I believe, is if we can nurture families during this very vital stage of, pregnancy, even pre-pregnancy, postnatal, and have programs at the masjid, it normalizes the parents coming to the masjid, and then therefore normalizes their children coming to the masjid, and it just becomes a ripple effect. So the children would attend masjid with their mom and dad because they've been there for the very, very foundation of their pre-birth and then with their stomach womb, up until toddlers, and then they would be so used to come to the masjid, inshallah, that it would be their safe space and a place that they love to go to.
And it's creating that indeed. Caller, we'd love to invite you in. We don't have very much time left, so I'm wondering if you can make your point across in 1 minute, please.
Is that myself, is it? Hello,
caller. Assalamu alaikum.
Hi. Walaikum salam, how are you?
We're good, thank you very much. We're coming towards the end of the show, so I'm sorry I have squeezed you a little bit.
No, that's okay. To be honest with you, like, I don't tend to like call in. Well, to be honest with you, I've only been listening to this particular station for the last couple of days. I'm not very practicing myself, but I've got strong faith in, our religion. And I was just interested by obviously what we were discussing. It's a shame that we've only got a minute now today to discuss. But, there's various things that I mentioned there. But, I think we're looking for a lot of solutions outside of the religion, Quran, Hafiz. And the answers are all there. Believe you and me, when you've lived a life full of ups and downs, which most of us have, when we do need somebody, we do need to turn to someone, it's always Allah. And, although you might think that, in raising the engagement in the mosques and stuff like that, it's brilliant ideas because, I think the Sheikh just mentioned there, often he does the sermon and no one's there, you see. But as we approach Ramadan, I'd like to think that, that would change. But like I say, the answers are truly there. And once we start showing younger people, and I'm one of those younger people, I'd say I'm the bridge between the younger generation and the...
I'm afraid we're coming towards the very end of the show.
No worries.
But thank you for
maybe next time.
And explain that to us. I don't think we even have time to respond to that. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Dr. Hafiz and Shabana, you can see you have created a lovely debate here this evening, a lovely show this evening where we've lots of interaction. We'll have to have you back again. That's the only way we can get through these callers and talk more about the mosque's role, inshallah. Listeners, have a great week, inshallah. Thank you again to our guest, Jazakallah khairan. Look after yourselves, stay safe, and until next week, Assalamu alaikum.
Cheers, good afternoon. Take care, bye.